The corridors of Mercy General Hospital always seemed longer during the night. The cold lights reflected on the ceramic floor, creating elongated shadows that seemed to chase Sarah Mitchell as she walked toward room 304. The weight of the last few weeks had left deep marks on her face, once radiant with life. "It's been almost 3 months," she whispered to herself, clutching the crucifix she wore around her neck. Upon entering the room, her eyes immediately fixed on the small figure lying in the hospital bed. Emily, her 7-year-old daughter, seemed to sleep peacefully. Her dark curls spread across the white pillow. The monitors beside the bed emitted a constant beep, the only proof that life still persisted in that small body. "Good evening, my love," Sarah said, sitting in the chair next to the bed and holding her daughter's small, fragile hand. "Mommy's here." There was no response. There never was. The accident 3 months ago had stolen Emily from her, leaving only a body without consciousness, trapped in a deep coma that doctors said was irreversible. The door opened softly, and Dr. Thomas Richards entered, his impeccably white coat contrasting with the deep dark circles under his eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell," he greeted with a nod, "may we talk for a moment?" She nodded, already knowing what would come next. It was always the same conversation. The latest scans showed no change. He began, his voice clinical, distant. "It's time to consider other options." "How you mean giving up on her?" Sarah replied, her voice trembling with contained emotion. "Mrs. Mitchell, I understand your pain, but we need to be realistic. Emily's brain hasn't shown significant activity for 3 months. We're only prolonging the inevitable." A heavy silence hung between them. Outside, the first signs of a storm were beginning to manifest, with wind lashing against the hospital windows. "The papers for the procedure are ready," the doctor continued, avoiding her eyes. "We just need your signature. It would be best. For Emily, believe me." Sarah stood up abruptly. "I need more time." "Time won't change anything, ma'am." "I said I need more time." Her voice echoed through the room, surprising even herself. The doctor sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Very well. I'll leave the documents here. I'll be in the doctor's lounge if you need me." When the door closed, Sarah collapsed in the chair, silent tears streaming down her face. How could she sign those papers? How could she authorize the end of her only daughter's life? "I can't do this, Emily," she whispered, caressing the girl's face. "I need a sign, anything to tell me what to do." At that moment, a particularly strong thunderclap shook the hospital, and the lights flickered momentarily. The rain was now falling in torrents, creating a curtain of water on the windows, and that's when Sarah's phone rang. "Hello?" she answered, her voice choked. "Sarah? This is Sheriff Robert Parker, an old family friend. I need to speak with you urgently about Emily." "Robert, I can't right now. The doctors are pressuring me to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Don't sign anything." The urgency in his voice alarmed her. "I discovered something about her treatment. Something isn't right. I'm heading—" "There now." The call dropped before she could ask more. Sarah looked at the phone, confused when she heard a commotion in the corridors. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. Then came the sound she would never expect to hear on the 3rd floor of a hospital, the powerful neigh of a horse. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The neigh echoed again through the corridors, closer this time. Sarah stood up with a start, her heart racing. The idea of a horse inside the hospital seemed so absurd that for a moment she believed she was hallucinating, exhausted from stress and sadness. "Stop that animal!" someone shouted in the corridor. So it was real. Sarah ran to the door and opened it just a crack enough to peek at the chaos forming. Staff ran from side to side, some trying to prevent the advance of something she still couldn't see. "How did a horse get in here?" questioned a nurse, trying to control the panic. "Nobody knows. It appeared at the main entrance, soaked from the rain, and simply walked in," replied a security guard, visibly disturbed. Sarah opened the door wider, unable to contain her curiosity. That's when she saw it. A magnificent white horse, its coat gleaming despite being wet from the rain. The animal advanced calmly through the corridors as if it knew the way, its hooves making a rhythmic sound against the floor. The staff tried to intercept it, but something in the animal's gaze made them hesitate at the last moment. "My God," murmured Sarah, hypnotized by the surreal scene. The horse turned its head toward her, its deep brown eyes fixing on hers. For an instant, Sarah felt as if time had stopped. There was something in that gaze, something human, conscious. The animal began to move in her direction. "Ma'am, close the door," shouted one of the security guards. "The animal could be dangerous." But Sarah couldn't move. The horse approached with determined steps, its head held high in an almost noble posture. When it reached the door of room 304, it stopped completely. It stopped," said Sarah, her voice a thread. "How did it know which room?" Before anyone could answer, the horse gently pushed the door with its muzzle and entered the room. Sarah backed away, instinctively placing herself between the animal and Emily's bed, knowing it would be useless against the horse's strength, if it decided to advance. But the animal showed no aggression. On the contrary, it slowly approached the bed, its eyes now fixed on Emily's small figure. Sarah watched, paralyzed between fear and fascination. "What do you want with my daughter?" she asked in a whisper, as if really expecting an answer. The horse tilted its head, almost as if it had understood her. Then, with a gentle movement, it lowered itself and touched its muzzle to Emily's exposed arm. The heart monitor beside the bed emitted a different sound, more accelerated. Sarah quickly looked at the device and saw something that made her catch her breath. Emily's heartbeat had increased significantly. "Emily!" she called, approaching her daughter, momentarily forgetting the horse. "Honey?" The girl didn't open. Her eyes, but her fingers moved slightly, a small, almost imperceptible spasm. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands, unable to believe what she was seeing. "Nurse!" she shouted. "Someone! Come quick!" In seconds, the room was full. Dr. Richards was the first to enter, followed by 2 nurses and a security guard. Everyone stopped, shocked by the scene. The imposing white horse beside the bed, Sarah with tears in her eyes, and the monitors showing unusual activity. "What's happening here?" asked the doctor, his voice a mixture of confusion and irritation. "Get that animal out of here immediately." "No," Sarah intervened. "Look at the monitors. Something's happening to Emily since it touched her." Dr. Richards glanced quickly at the devices, his face visibly paling. This isn't possible," he murmured, approaching to check the signals. "It must be equipment failure." "It's not a failure," Sarah replied firmly. "I saw her fingers move. Something is happening, Doctor, and it started when this horse came in here." The doctor frowned, his expression changing from surprise to incredulity, and then to something Sarah couldn't identify. "Was it concern? We'll run new tests," he said finally, his voice now controlled. "As for the animal, we need to remove it. It violates all hospital sanitary regulations." "It doesn't seem to want to harm anyone," Sarah argued. "What if it's the reason for this change?" "Mrs. Mitchell, that's absurd. A horse can't influence the clinical state of a comatose patient." At that moment, Sarah's cell phone rang again. It was Sheriff Parker. "Robert, you won't believe what's happening here." "I'm arriving, Sarah. Don't let anyone touch Emily until I get there. And especially don't let Dr. Richards be alone with her." Sheriff Robert Parker arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later, soaked from the rain that continued to fall mercilessly outside. His firm steps echoed down the corridor as he headed to room 304, ignoring the curious looks from the staff. The news of the mysterious horse had already spread throughout the hospital. When he entered the room, the scene he found left him momentarily speechless. Sarah remained beside Emily's bed, firmly holding her daughter's hand, while the imposing white horse stood near the window like a silent guardian. "My God, so it's true," murmured the sheriff, running his hand through his graying hair. Sarah rose to embrace him. "Robert, thank God you're here. They want to remove the horse, but since it touched Emily, her vital signs have changed. She moved, Robert, for the first time in 3 months." The sheriff squeezed her hands tightly. "We need to talk, Sarah. I've discovered some very serious things about Emily's treatment." Dr. Richards, who was at the nursing station reviewing the newly requested tests, entered the room at that moment. "Sheriff Parker," he said with a formal nod. "I didn't know you were involved in this case." "I'm involved in anything concerning Sarah's family," replied the sheriff, his tone making it clear there was a history between the two men, "especially when I discover irregularities in a child's treatment." The doctor hardened his expression. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sheriff, but I suggest this conversation happen in private, not in front of the patient." "What conversation? What's happening?" questioned Sarah, looking from one to the other. The sheriff removed a slightly damp folder from the inside pocket of his coat. "I found this in the hospital pharmacy archives. These are records of medications administered to Emily over the past 3 months. Dr. Richards stepped forward, trying to intercept the documents. "Those are confidential documents. How did you access them?" "I have my methods, Doctor," replied the sheriff coldly, "and I'm glad I investigated. Sarah, your daughter is receiving doses of benzodiazepines well above the normal protocol for patients in her condition." "What?" Sarah looked at the doctor, horrified. "What does that mean?" The sheriff continued. "These medications in high doses can suppress brain activity and artificially maintain a state of deep unconsciousness. In other words, Emily might have awakened weeks ago if not for this medication." Dr. Richards' face paled, but he maintained his composure. "That's absurd. The medications are necessary to prevent seizures and secondary neurological damage. The dosages are within acceptable limits for her case." "That's not what standardized medical protocols say," countered the sheriff, handing Sarah another document. "I consulted 3 independent neurologists. They all agreed these dosages are excessive and potentially harmful." Sarah felt her world crumbling even more. First, the possibility of losing her daughter forever, and now the suspicion that she might have been intentionally kept in that state. "Why?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "Why would anyone do this to a child?" The horse, which had remained quiet until then, suddenly moved, approaching the doctor. Dr. Richards backed away, visibly uncomfortable with the animal's presence. "Get that beast out of here," he demanded, his composure finally breaking. "This is a hospital, not a stable." "The horse stays," declared Sarah with surprising firmness. "Since it arrived, my daughter has been showing signs of improvement for the first time in months. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences anymore." "Doctor." At that moment, a nurse entered the room hurriedly. "Doctor, Emily's new tests are here," she announced, handing him an envelope, "and there's something you need to see." Dr. Richards opened the envelope with slightly trembling hands. His face changed expression several times as he examined the results: surprise, confusion, and finally something that seemed like genuine fear. "This isn't possible," he murmured. "What do the tests say?" Sarah demanded. The doctor looked at everyone in the room, including the horse, before answering. "Her brain activity, it's coming back. Areas that were completely inactive in recent months are showing signs of recovery." An emotion-laden silence filled the room. Sheriff Parker broke it. "Sarah, I want you to request Emily's immediate transfer to another hospital, and I'm going to request Dr. Richards's license be suspended until a complete investigation is conducted." "For you can't do that," protested the doctor. "You don't have authority here." "Maybe I don't have authority here in the hospital," replied the sheriff calmly. "But I have contacts on the state medical board who would be very interested in these altered medication records." Sarah approached her daughter's bed, her hands trembling. "Emily, are you coming back to us?" she whispered, stroking the girl's hair. As if answering her mother's question, Emily's small hand moved again, this time gently squeezing Sarah's fingers. The night advanced slowly at Mercy General Hospital. The storm outside was beginning to diminish, but the storm inside room 304 was only growing. Dr. Richards had been escorted out of the room by Sheriff Parker, who insisted on a private conversation in the hospital's meeting room. Sarah remained by Emily's side, observing every small movement her daughter made, every fluctuation on the monitors, as if they were the most precious jewels in the world. The white horse continued in the room, now lying in a corner, its attentive, eyes fixed on the girl. No one tried to remove it anymore. There was something in the animal's presence that inspired respect and, strangely, trust. "Who are you?" whispered Sarah to the horse. "Why did you come to my daughter?" The animal just looked at her, its deep eyes seeming to contain a universe of secrets. The door opened, and Nurse Jessica, who had always been kind to Sarah during those difficult months, entered silently. "How is she?" she asked, approaching to check the vital signs. "Different," replied Sarah. "It's as if she were coming back little by little." Jessica checked the monitors and made some notes in the chart. "I've never seen anything like this in 15 years of nursing," she confessed. "Her signals are really improving, and this horse—" She looked at the animal with admiration. "It seems like it came straight out of a fairy tale." Sarah sighed. "Jessica, you've worked with Dr. Richards for a day. Long time. Have you noticed anything strange in his behavior, especially regarding Emily?" The nurse hesitated, biting her lower lip. "I shouldn't talk about this." "Please," Sarah implored. "It's my daughter. I need to understand what's happening." Jessica looked at the door, making sure they were alone, and then sat beside Sarah. "Dr. Richards has always been a dedicated doctor, but since Emily arrived, he became obsessive with her case. He insisted on being the only doctor to adjust. Her medication spent hours observing the monitors, sometimes even during the early morning. But why? What does my daughter represent to him?" "I don't know exactly," replied Jessica, "but once late at night, I heard him murmur something while looking at her, something like so much like her. I can't fail again." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Who could he be talking about? Before Jessica could answer, they heard raised voices in the corridor. The door opened abruptly and Sheriff Parker entered, his face a mask of contained fury. "The ambulance to transfer Emily will arrive in the morning," he announced. "I got authorization to take her to University Hospital in Boston." "What happened in the conversation with Dr. Richards?" asked Sarah. The sheriff exchanged a significant look with Jessica. "I think we'd better talk in private." The nurse nodded. "I'll check on other patients. I'll come back later to see how Emily is doing." When they were alone, the sheriff sat heavily in the chair Jessica had vacated. "That man," he began, shaking his head. "He confessed, Sarah, confessed that he was intentionally manipulating Emily's medication." "But why?" Sarah's voice failed. "What could my daughter have done?" "It's not what she did," replied the sheriff. "It's who she is, or rather, who she reminds him of. Emily is physically identical to the daughter he lost 7 years ago. Lily, that was her name. She was the same age as Emily when she suffered a very similar accident." Sarah covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. "He couldn't save her," continued the sheriff. "And when Emily arrived at the hospital, with the same type of injury, same age, similar appearance, something broke in him. He convinced himself he could correct his past mistake, save Emily where he had failed with Lily. But he was keeping my daughter in a coma. How could that save her? In his disturbed mind, it was a form of protection. He believed that if Emily woke up before being completely recovered, she could develop permanent neurological sequelae, as Lily developed before." The sheriff paused, choosing his words, before passing away. He was obsessed with ensuring a perfect recovery, even if it meant keeping Emily unconscious longer than necessary. Sarah felt a mixture of anger and pity. What happens to him now? "He's in custody. The hospital board has been notified, and a formal investigation will be opened. But the most important thing now is Emily. And this unexpected visitor," he said, looking at the horse. As if feeling they were talking about it, the animal stood up and walked to the bed, again touching its muzzle to Emily's arm. The monitors beside the bed showed a new change, more defined brainwaves, a stronger heartbeat. "This is amazing," murmured the sheriff. Sarah watched, amazed. When she noticed something, a small golden medallion hanging from the horse's neck, partially hidden by the white mane. She had never noticed it before. Moved by curiosity, she approached and touched the object. It was an ancient medal, with an inscription worn by time. As she turned it over, she felt her heart accelerate. Engraved in the metal was a name, Lily. If this story interested you, Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Lily? Sarah read the name on the medallion aloud, her hands trembling. Robert, look at this. The sheriff approached, examining the medallion carefully. It can't be a coincidence, he murmured, running his fingers over the worn inscription. But what does it mean? Sarah looked at the horse, which maintained that serene and intelligent gaze. Who are you? She asked again, this time with more urgency. Do you have some connection to Dr. Richards's daughter? The animal merely tilted its head slightly, as if considering the question. The mystery seemed to deepen with each moment. We need to find out more about Lily, said Sarah, determined. Maybe that explains what's happening here. The sheriff nodded. I'll make some calls, see what I can find out about her and Dr. Richards's family. While the sheriff left the room to make his calls, Sarah turned her attention back to Emily. The little girl remained motionless, but the monitors showed increasingly promising signs of brain activity. I'm here, my love, she whispered, caressing her daughter's face. Keep fighting. The horse moved to the other side of the bed, and Sarah noticed something she hadn't perceived before, a long, thin scar that cut across the animal's flank, partially covered by the white coat. It seemed old, but still visible. You've been through something painful too, haven't you? She murmured, extending her hand to gently touch the scar. The moment her fingers touched the mark, a strange sensation ran through her body, like a gentle but intense electric current. For a brief instant, Sarah saw flashes of images in her mind. A girl laughing while riding a white horse, the same girl in a hospital bed, a younger Dr. Richards crying desperately, and then the horse, running alone, in the rain. Sarah backed, away, startled by the intensity of the experience. What was that? She whispered to herself, looking at the animal with a mixture of fear and fascination. The door opened again, and Sheriff Parker returned, accompanied by Nurse Jessica. I discovered something, announced the sheriff. Lily, Dr. Richards' daughter, loved horses. She had riding lessons since she was 4 years old, and the accident that sent her to the hospital was during one of those lessons. She fell from the horse? Asked Sarah. Not exactly, replied the sheriff. According to my source, she was riding when a car speeding out of control veered near the stables. The horse, trying to protect her, threw itself between her and the vehicle, absorbing part of the impact. Even so, Lily suffered a severe head trauma. And the horse? Asked Sarah, already suspecting the answer. Survived, but was seriously injured, had a scar on its flank. Like this one, completed Sarah, indicating the mark on the white animal's flank. The sheriff and Jessica approached, observing the scar with astonishment. It can't be the same animal, said Jessica, incredulous. That was 7 years ago, and how would it know where to find Emily? Maybe it's not just a horse, suggested Sarah, her voice low. When I touched that scar, I saw things, memories perhaps, of Lily, of Dr. Richards, of this same horse. The sheriff looked at her with concern. Sarah, I know we're all exhausted and emotionally shaken, but I'm not imagining things, Robert, she insisted. There's something special about this animal, something beyond our understanding. Jessica, who had remained silent, approached the horse cautiously. When I was a child, my grandmother told stories about guide animals, she said. Beings that transitioned between worlds, helping lost souls find their way. In American folklore, especially in certain native traditions, they're called spirit guides. Are you suggesting this horse is some kind of spirit? Asked the sheriff skeptically. I don't know what it is, replied Jessica, but look at the facts. A horse appears out of nowhere during a storm, finds the exact path to a comatose girl's room, carries a medallion with the name of the deceased daughter of the doctor who was treating her, and has a scar identical to that of the horse that tried to save Lily. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. And since it arrived, Emily has started showing signs of improvement. At that moment, Emily's heart monitor emitted a different sound, more accelerated. The 3 adults immediately turned to the girl. Sarah was the first to reach the bedside. "Emily?" she called, hopeful. The girl's eyes moved under her closed eyelids. Her fingers contracted slightly and her breathing changed rhythm. "She's responding," exclaimed Jessica, quickly checking the vital signs. The horse approached closer, its muzzle almost touching Emily's face. Sarah, instead of pushing it away, felt she should allow that approach, as if something deep inside her knew it was the right thing to do. "What's happening to her?" asked the sheriff, keeping his distance. "I'm not sure," replied Jessica, "but her vital signs are stronger than at any time since the accident. It's as if she were fighting to come back." Sarah held her daughter's hand firmly. "We're here. My love, we're all here waiting for you." And then something happened. Emily opened her eyes. Emily's eyes blinked a few times, adjusting to the dim lighting in the room. They were bright brown eyes, exactly as Sarah remembered, but there was something different about them now. A depth that hadn't existed before, as if they had seen more than a 7-year-old child should see. "Emily?" called Sarah, her voice choked with emotion. "Honey, can you hear me?" The girl didn't respond immediately. Her gaze wandered around the room, first finding her mother's face, then the sheriff's and Nurse Jessica's, until finally resting on the white horse. Upon seeing the animal, her lips curved into the slightest of smiles. "Lily," she whispered, so softly that Sarah almost didn't hear. A perplexed silence took over the room. Jessica was the first to react, approaching to check the girl's vital signs. "Emily, dear, do you know where you are?" asked the nurse in a professional but gentle tone. Emily turned her gaze from the horse and focused on Jessica. "Hospital," she answered, her voice hoarse from lack of use. "How long?" "3 months, my love," replied Sarah, tears flowing freely down her face. "You've been sleeping for 3 months." The girl nodded slowly, as if the information made sense to her. "Water?" she asked. Jessica quickly brought a cup. With a straw helping her drink small sips, Sarah watched every movement, every blink, as if she couldn't believe her daughter was really back. "I'll get the doctor on duty," said Jessica, after helping Emily with the water. "We need to do a complete evaluation immediately." When the nurse left, Sheriff Parker approached the bed, his normally serious face now illuminated by an emotional smile. "Welcome back, little one," he said, gently holding Emily's hand. "We missed you." Emily looked at him and then at her mother, before fixing her gaze back on the white horse. "She brought me back," said the girl, pointing to the animal. Sarah and the sheriff exchanged confused looks. "She?" asked Sarah. "You mean the horse?" Emily nodded. "Lily. She's Lily now." The sheriff leaned in, his voice soft. "Emily, how do you know that name? Did someone talk to you about Lily before?" The girl frowned, as if trying to organize thoughts, too complex to express in words. "I saw her in there," she finally answered, vaguely pointing to the space around her. "Where I was. She was sad because her father was sad, and she wanted to help me get back to my mum." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Was it possible that during her coma, Emily had somehow encountered the essence, the spirit, the soul of Lily? And "She's in this horse?" asked Sarah, trying to understand. "Not exactly," replied Emily, with surprising clarity for a child, who had just awakened from a coma. "The horse helped her before, now she helps through it. It's complicated to explain." The sheriff ran his hand through his graying hair, visibly disturbed. "This is extraordinary." The door opened again and Jessica returned, accompanied by a doctor whom Sarah recognized as Dr. Catherine, a neurologist at the hospital. "My God, it's true then," said the doctor, approaching the bed quickly. "Jessica told me Emily had awakened, but I needed to see it with my own eyes." Dr. Catherine began to examine Emily, checking her pupils, reflexes, asking simple questions to assess her orientation. To everyone's surprise, the girl responded with clarity, as if the long period in a coma hadn't affected her cognitive functions. "This is remarkable," commented the doctor, after concluding the preliminary examination. "Her neurological reflexes are practically normal, We need to run more tests, of course, but—" She stopped upon noticing the white horse standing in the corner of the room. "What? How?" "It's a long story, Doctor," explained the sheriff, "but this animal seems to have some connection to Emily's recovery." The doctor shook her head, clearly not knowing how to process that information. "Well, whatever the explanation, the results are surprising. I'll arrange for a CT scan and other tests immediately, and, of course, we need to discuss Dr. Richards's case." "He's sad," interrupted Emily. "He thinks he was helping me, but he was confused." All the adults turned to the girl, perplexed. "How do you know about Dr. Richards?" asked Sarah. "Lily told me," replied Emily simply. "She wants him to know that she understands that she's not angry, she's at peace now." An emotion-laden silence filled the room. The horse approached the bed, inclining its majestic head near Emily, who extended her hand to caress its muzzle. "Thank you," whispered the girl to the animal. Dr. Catherine cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the situation was taking. "Well, let's proceed with the tests," she said, trying to regain professional control of the situation. "And as for the animal, we'll have to discuss this with the hospital administration. It's not exactly protocol to have a horse in a hospital room." "He won't stay much longer," said Emily, surprising everyone again. "Lily has already done what she needed to. She just wanted to make sure I would be okay." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, holding her daughter's hand between hers. "What else did Lily tell you, sweetie?" Emily looked at her mother, her eyes conveying wisdom beyond her years. "Many things, Mom. About being lost and finding the way back. About helping those left behind, and about how love never really disappears. It just changes form." The news of Emily's miraculous awakening spread quickly through Mercy General Hospital. Doctors and nurses passed by room 304 with curious looks, both for the unexpected recovery of the patient and for the unusual presence of the white horse, which was now tolerated by the administration as a special exception, thanks to Sheriff Parker's intervention. Throughout the following day, Emily underwent a battery of tests. To the astonishment of the medical team, all results showed a remarkable recovery. Brain activity had returned to patterns close to normal, and there were no signs of significant neurological sequelae, something practically unprecedented for such a prolonged coma case. "It's as if she never suffered the accident," commented Dr. Catherine, analyzing the latest results with Sarah. "In 30 years of medicine, I've never seen such a complete and rapid recovery." Sarah smiled, watching Emily, who was sleeping peacefully in her bed. A normal sleep this time, not the coma that had kept her prisoner for so long. "Some things are beyond our understanding, Doctor," she replied. "I've learned that in the last few days." The white horse remained in the room, now lying in a corner, always vigilant. The hospital staff had brought water and even some hay, still perplexed by the situation but adapting to it. In the late afternoon, Sheriff Parker returned to the hospital, his face marked by a grave expression. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, indicating they should leave the room so as not to disturb Emily's sleep. In the corridor, he continued, "Dr. Richards is requesting to see Emily. Says he needs to apologize, explain what happened." Sarah felt anger resurface. "How dare he, after everything he did?" "I agree it's an audacious request," replied the sheriff. "But there's something you should know. I spoke with his wife, Rachel. She told me more about Lily and the tragedy that struck them." He paused as if organizing his thoughts. "Lily had a white horse named Star. They were inseparable. On the day of the accident, the horse really tried to protect her, placing itself between her and the car. Both were hit. Lily survived initially, but remained in a coma for weeks. When she finally woke up, she had severe neurological sequelae. Thomas tried everything, but 6 months later she was gone." Sarah placed her hand on her chest, feeling the pain of that story. "The horse Star survived, but was never the same," continued the sheriff. "Rachel said it would spend hours looking at Lily's empty room, refusing to let anyone else ride it. 2 years after the accident, during a strong storm, it escaped from the stable and was never found again." You think it's the same animal? After so many years, the sheriff shrugged. Scientifically, it's highly unlikely, but after what we've witnessed these last few days, I don't know what to think anymore. Sarah looked through the window of the room, observing the horse that now seemed to be sleeping. What should I do about Thomas? The decision is yours, replied the sheriff. He faces serious ethical and possibly criminal charges. But perhaps this meeting will bring some closure, not just for him, but for Emily too. She seems to have a connection to this whole story that we don't fully understand. After a few moments of reflection, Sarah nodded. All right, but I want you present. The whole time. 3 hours later, Dr. Thomas Richards entered room 304, accompanied by 2 security guards and Sheriff Parker. His face was pale and haggard. Deep, dark circles marked his eyes. He no longer looked like the confident and authoritative doctor Sarah knew. Emily was awake now, sitting in bed with a storybook a nurse had brought. When she saw the doctor enter, she calmly closed the book. "Hello, Dr. Richards," she said with surprising naturalness. The doctor stopped, visibly shaken by hearing the girl's voice for the first time. "Emily," he replied, his voice almost a whisper. I came to apologize." Sarah remained close to her daughter, tense and protective. The horse, which had been lying down, slowly stood up, its eyes fixed on the doctor. Thomas looked at the animal, and an expression of recognition passed over his face. "It can't be," he murmured. "It's Star, isn't it?" asked Emily. Lily said, "You all missed him very much." The doctor staggered, needing to lean against the wall. How do you know about Lily, about Star?" "She told me," replied Emily with simplicity, "while I was sleeping. She was there with me. She said, 'You were very sad and that made you make mistakes.'" Tears began to stream down Thomas's face. "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sorry, Sarah. I truly believed I was protecting her, that I could save her where I failed with my daughter. But I was wrong, terribly wrong." Sarah remained silent, her expression hard, but Emily continued. "Lily isn't angry with you, you know, she understands. But she wants you to understand too that you need to move forward. She's fine now." The doctor looked at the horse, which was now slowly approaching. "Star," he called, extending a trembling hand. The animal inclined its head, allowing the doctor to touch its muzzle. At that moment, something seemed to break inside Thomas, and he fell to his knees, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I'm sorry for everything." Emily looked at her mother, then at the sheriff, and then addressed the doctor again. She said, "You have to let her go. That Rachel and her little brother need you. They're still here." Thomas raised his head, surprised. "Little brother? How do you—" "The baby that's going to be born," explained Emily. "Lily says it's a boy, and that everything will be okay if you allow it." Sarah watched the scene, astonished. How could Emily know that Thomas's wife was pregnant? By the shocked look on the doctor's face, even he didn't seem to know this information. The horse moved away from the doctor and returned to Emily's side, its muzzle gently touching the girl's arm. "I think it's time," said Emily, looking at the animal with a serene expression. "She needs to go now, and he does too." "Go?" asked Sarah. "Where?" Emily smiled, a tranquil and wise smile. "Where they belong, Mum. They just needed to finish some things first." The white horse neighed softly as if agreeing and walked toward the window of the room, which overlooked the hospital garden. The rain had completely stopped, and a ray of afternoon sunlight entered through the window, creating a golden path on the floor. Everyone in the room felt at that moment that they were witnessing something sacred, beyond human comprehension. The horse looked one last time at Emily, then at Dr. Richards, and then inexplicably began to walk toward the light. 1 year had passed since the extraordinary events at Mercy General Hospital. Pinewood had returned to its tranquil routine, but stories about the miracle of the white horse continued to be told in whispers through the hospital corridors and in conversation circles of the small town. Sarah adjusted the ribbon on Emily's yellow dress as the girl moved impatiently in front of the mirror. "Stay still, sweetie. We need to look presentable today." "But we're late, Mom." The inauguration party must have already started, protested Emily, now 8 years old, full of energy and vitality. Sarah smiled, observing her daughter with that mixture of love and gratitude that had never left her since the miraculous awakening. The doctors in Boston, where Emily had been transferred after the incident, found no scientific explanation for her complete recovery. There were no sequelae, no limitations. It was as if the accident had never happened. "Some things are worth waiting for," replied Sarah, adjusting the ribbon one last time. "There, now we're ready." They left home and walked along familiar streets until they reached a large plot of land on the outskirts of town. The place, once abandoned, was now transformed. A large wooden gate displayed a golden plaque. Guiding Star Equine Therapy Center. Dozens of people were already gathered at the site, chatting animatedly under white tents that protected them from the strong summer sun. Children ran across the green grass, and in the main area, horses of various colors grazed peacefully. Emily, Sarah, Sheriff Parker spotted them and came in their direction, embracing them warmly. "We were waiting for you. The ceremony is about to begin." "Sorry for the delay, Robert," said Sarah. "Emily couldn't decide what to wear. I wanted to look nice for the horses," explained the girl, smiling. The sheriff laughed. "Well, they're going to love you for sure. Come, the seats of honor are reserved." They walked to the main area, where chairs had been arranged in front of a small stage. In the front row, a pregnant woman held a baby of approximately 6 months in her lap. Beside her, another familiar face, Dr. Thomas Richards. Much had changed since those days at the hospital. Thomas had faced the consequences of his actions. His medical license was suspended for a year, and he underwent intensive psychological treatment. But what could have been the end of his story became a new beginning. When Sarah and Emily approached, Thomas stood up, his face showing a mixture of nervousness and hope. "Sarah, Emily," he greeted them formally. "Thank you for coming." "We wouldn't miss it for anything," replied Sarah, with a cordiality that had taken months to build. Emily approached the woman and the baby. "He's Gabriel, isn't he?" she asked, looking at the baby who smiled in his mother's lap. Rachel, Thomas's wife, nodded with a smile. "Yes, how did you know we would choose that name?" Emily shrugged, with that mysterious smile that sometimes still disconcerted the adults around her. "I just knew." The baby extended his tiny hand toward Emily, who held it gently. A moment of significant silence passed between them, as if an invisible connection was established. "And this one," said Rachel, caressing her belly, "will be Michael. He should arrive in 3 months. 2 boys, what a blessing," commented Sarah. "And a girl who will always be in our hearts," added Thomas softly. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a microphone being adjusted. Everyone took their seats as Thomas ascended the small stage. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice firm despite the visible emotion. "I thank each of you for your presence at the inauguration of the Guiding Star Equine Therapy Center. This place is born from a story of pain, but also of redemption and hope." He paused, looking directly at Emily and Sarah. "A year ago, I was lost in the darkness of my own grief. I made mistakes for which I can never fully apologize, but through a miracle I cannot explain, I received a second chance." Murmurs ran through the audience. The story of the white horse and Emily's miraculous awakening had spread, although few knew all the details. "This center," continued Thomas, "will be dedicated to children with special needs, offering therapy assisted by horses. We know the healing power these animals have, how they can touch souls in ways that we humans often cannot." Emily squeezed her mother's hand, smiling. "The name Guiding Star is a dual tribute to the horse that once protected my daughter, Lily, and to the light that guides us through the darkest moments. May this place be a beacon of hope for many families." Enthusiastic applause followed the speech. As Thomas descended from the stage, the festivities continued with the presentation of some of the therapy horses that would work at the center. Sarah observed everything with a mixture of emotions. The path to this moment had not been easy. Forgiving Thomas had been a long and painful process, but Emily, with her inexplicable wisdom, had been fundamental. "He's hurting too, Mom," she had said. "Months ago. Lily wants him to be happy again." One of the instructors approached Emily. "We'd like to introduce someone very special to you," he said, leading the girl to the main stable. Inside, separated from the others, was a white foal, born just 3 months before. When it saw Emily, the small animal neighed softly and approached. "This is Moonlight," explained the instructor. "We thought you two might get along well." Emily caressed the foal's muzzle, her eyes shining with joy. "He has the same eyes," she whispered to her mother. Sarah didn't need to ask which eyes she was referring to. Later, as the sun began to set, Sarah and Emily walked back home. The girl was tired but happy, talking animatedly about her new friendship with Moonlight and about the riding lessons Thomas had offered her. "You know, Mum," said Emily suddenly, her voice acquiring that serious tone that still surprised Sarah, "Lily said that sometimes we need to get lost to truly find ourselves." Sarah stopped, looking at her daughter. "Do you still talk to her?" Emily smiled, enigmatic. "Not in the same way. But she's around, you know, just like Star. They're fine now and happy that we are too." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, feeling a deep gratitude for the second chance they had received. "And you, my love? Are you happy?" Emily looked at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Yes, Mum. Happier than ever." As they continued on their way, a gentle breeze blew around them, bringing the distant sound of a neigh. Emily smiled, as if understanding a message that only she could hear. Some stories never really end, thought Sarah. They just find new ways to continue. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us what city you're watching from.